Okay, so let's start, and I hope Pat will join soon. I'm so glad that that you guys joined this meeting. I think this is a huge, really huge honor for me, because well, Joseph Brodsky is one of my favorite poets. Guys, if you are not talking, I would ask to put yourself on mute, right? I can see Diana from California joined. Cool. Yeah, so Brodsky is one of my favorite poets, and some friends who are here, they know that. He was born in 1940, right before the war actually started in Soviet Union, and today, literally today, he would be 80. He died in 96. So when I was growing in the Soviet Union, his name was forbidden because he at some point, when he was 21, there was a trial. Officially he was accused that he is a parasite, so he is not working, not doing anything. So the society has to feed him. In fact, he was actually really not like. What he was written was, it was not against the Soviet government, but it was so like it didn't go well together. He was not under the system, so it was a trial. And after that, he was put in a jail, and then to some area in the north. Then he came back. Then he emigrated, and after that, his name was actually not allowed. So in Russia, in Soviet Union back then, we used to his poems were not published. What we did, we just printed. We would make our printouts. You know what? Actually, I will bring one. I will bring the book that I have from my parents. You will see it. So I will show my screen. So this is the book. This is what people did. Can you see my screen? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that was made in about 1970, and this is how it looked. What people would print actually in just made their own books, because, and if authorities, whatever police would find it, you will get in trouble. And this, so some of his texts I know from these printouts. Of course, now I have very nice and official books, beautifully illustrated and whatnot. But this is my favorite because this is what I have from my parents from the times then it was not forbidden. So when we made poetry shows, I would include some of Brodsky poetry, but I asked all my friends, just don't. I would call some other names, imaginary names, just don't call this name. He got Nobel Prize in 1987. And after that, he was, and by that time already Perestroika started in Soviet Union, everything was allowed. I had, now it's very funny to recall about this, but I was so crazy about his poetry. I almost physically felt that he is like around me. At some point, you can laugh at me. I did write actually a love letter to Brodsky, and I was not 17, I was 27. Like how I sent this letter, I used to live in a city, Kazan. It's 800 kilometers from Moscow to the east. So somebody, one of my friends, he would go to Moscow, and the border was already open because Soviet Union started collapsing. So and somebody from Moscow would go to New York, and they had a request to deliver the letter to Brodsky. I sent this letter just to nowhere. I didn't even think if the letter reached the recipient, but this is not important. If you love something or somebody, if you send it, it will reach a certain destination. Doesn't matter if it reached the man that you love or somebody else. So this is like it. I was just this crazy. So on to this Joseph Brodsky Jubilee, which his 80th Jubilee. I planned three things. One is the event for Russian speakers, one is the event for English speakers, and one is actually the contest basically of declamations of his text and songs written on his text. So this number three, it was virtual from the very beginning, and only I believe three of you would understand, because this is all in Russian. So it played now in one radio in New York, one radio in Toronto, and also a Russian radio, and one radio in St. Petersburg. But that's what I have. And yes, so I wish my English would that as good that I could understand actually the level of translation. But whatever, what I asked my friends, I'm more than happy that people joined. It doesn't matter if you know something about Joseph Brodsky or not. So if you want to say something about Joseph Brodsky, say something about him. If you want to say something about Russian poetry, as Janine did very nicely in one of our events 5 years ago, do that too. So that's what it is. So I believe Janine was the first person who I asked. And do you want to present something, Janine? Oh, did I mute you? No.
Oh, there, no. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes. Just asking.
Well, I mostly came to this to learn more about Brodsky, because even though he's so globally famous, I'm not that well versed in him at all. But what I want to do, I think, to start is I'm going to read one poem by Brodsky that I chose. But first, I'm actually going to read part of a speech by Brodsky's fellow Nobel laureate a few years later, Wisława Szymborska from Poland, who references Brodsky in what I think is a really, just a really nice way. So I'm going to start with that. So Szymborska in 1996 got the Nobel Prize, and she gave a talk called The Poet and the World, and I'll just read the first little part of it, or a little excerpt from it. Contemporary poets are skeptical and suspicious even, or perhaps especially, about themselves. They publicly confess to being poets only reluctantly, as if they were a little ashamed of it. But in our clamorous times, it's much easier to acknowledge your faults, at least if they're attractively packaged, than to recognize your own merits, since these are hidden deeper and you never quite believe in them yourself. When filling in questionnaires or chatting with strangers, that is, when they can't avoid revealing their profession, poets prefer to use the general term writer or replace poet with the name of whatever job they do in addition to writing. Bureaucrats and bus passengers respond with a touch of incredulity and alarm when they find out that they're dealing with a poet. I suppose philosophers may meet with a similar reaction. Still, they're in a better position, since as often as not, they can embellish their calling with some kind of scholarly title. Professor of philosophy. Now that's much more respectable. But there are no professors of poetry. This would mean, after all, that poetry is an occupation requiring specialized study, regular examinations, theoretical articles with bibliography, footnotes attached, and finally, ceremoniously conferred diplomas. And this would mean, in turn, that it's not enough to cover pages with even the most exquisite poems in order to become a poet. The crucial element is some slip of paper bearing an official stamp. Let us recall that the pride of Russian poetry, the future Nobel laureate Joseph Brodsky, was once sentenced to internal exile precisely. They called him a parasite because he lacked official certification granting him the right to be a poet. Several years ago, I had the honor and pleasure of meeting Brodsky in person, and I noticed that of all the poets he was the only one who enjoyed calling himself a poet. He pronounced the word without inhibitions. Just the opposite. He spoke it with defiant freedom. It seems to me that this must have been because he recalled the brutal humiliations he had experienced in his youth. So that's just a little comment that she makes about Brodsky and how he was, as she knew him, always proud to call himself a poet because previously he had been told he didn't have the right to be one. And the poem I chose to read is January 1st, 1965, and it's an English translation by George L. Klein, since I have not yet learned Russian, maybe someday. The wise men will unlearn your name. Above your head, no star will flame. One weary sound will be the same, the hoarse roar of the gale. The shadows fall from your tired eyes as your lone bedside candle dies. For here the calendar breeds nights till stores of candles fail. What prompts this melancholy key? A long familiar melody. It sounds again, so let it be. Let it sound from this night. Let it sound in my hour of death, as gratefulness of eyes and lips for that which sometimes makes us lift our gaze to the far sky. You glare in silence at the wall. Your stocking gapes, no gifts at all. It's clear that you are now too old to trust in good Saint Nick, that it's too late for miracles. But suddenly, lifting your eyes to heaven's light, you realize your life is a sheer gift.
This is really cool, and you know what? First, as I said, thank you very much, because to my shame, I didn't know the name of the poetess Wisława. What's the last name?
Dvorska.
Yeah. After you told me, I read some. I really enjoyed it. Second, I did. Apparently, this poem of Joseph Brodsky, translation into English, I did read. This is very close and very nice. And honestly, it has slightly different flavor, because the end in the original is like yourself is a gift, not even the life is a gift. Yourself is a gift.
Nice.
But this, like both are nice. This is very cool. Janine, do you want to read anything from your recent poetry? I have your book.
I didn't come prepared for that. I mean, maybe at the end, let's keep the focus on Brodsky, but maybe,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Then thank you very much. And then I called the second person who I invited, Anna Yin. Do you want to say anything, to read anything?
Yes, I'm very glad to share my poems, because I'm very happy you invited me, and I search his poetry and the video, and I know more of his life experience, and I read a lot of poems of him. So I wrote a poem. I found the poem. So I posted it on the Zoom, the chatting. So you can see it. All these lines, all these lines are from like Joseph Brodsky's poem, sixth poem. So I took from 6 poems and I rearranged them. Then it's called Found the Poem. So I will read to you, and also echoed to what Jenny and also Watas said, right? The gift. So you can see all the lines there. So gift.
Oh.
I found the poem from Joseph Brodsky's poetry. Everything has its limit, including sorrow. The evening shadow robs the meadows of width and color. It's getting cold. Mirror, framed by bracken, sharp is the sound of pickaxe that hurts that iron. You sit by the window, sit in the dark, to figure out which is worse, the dark inside or the darkness out. Yet the fire and the page, the whispers and the clatter, the words of love and pity, from the mortal lips sound more clear than from the divine cotton word. You bow to the great souls who found them, then spread the gift of speech beyond the deaf-mute space ocean. You glare in silence at the wall, suddenly lifting your eyes to heaven's light. You realize your life is a sheer gift. So I think this poem also speaks to all of us, because I think for Joseph, poetry is his gift, and his life is also gift. So for us, poetry is it's gift to us, and we can use this gift to give it to others, to present to others. So I'm really glad for this event, because everyone can share the experience and also make use from his poetry. And I know he said in his poetry, he said Anna Akhmatova is his hero, right? And saved him as well. So Anna is also I love her poetry as well. Love her poetry very much. So she also is my hero. So later I can share some poems about I wrote after Anna. So so I will now, like other people, if you want to speak more, later I will read my poem for Anna's.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So for Anna's, it's sorry, I didn't quite realize how it's related to Brodsky, the Anna. Oh,
Anna, like she kind of push the government,
Oh.
yeah, to release, to reduce his sentence.
Yeah,
and
there was a very it was a big noise around.
Yeah.
Anna Akhmatova. Okay, I can say.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
I'm so happy to hear my favorite names. I'm not sure if everybody knows. Anna Akhmatova was one of the biggest names. Like pretty much like by age, she could be a mother of Brodsky. So yeah. She actually young poets, young by that time, they kind of did hang around, and they did read poetry to each other. Anna Akhmatova herself had a very it's a tragedy. Her own son was put in jail, and she had to stay and be quiet and not because he by Stalin by then. So it was a very difficult life. But she was an incredible woman, and she was so strong and kept until her death. She died in 66. So she kept everything and her spirit. Okay.
Yeah, also I want to share, I want to share the news, because I also translated this poem in Chinese. So wow. Yesterday I read in Chinese for another global Chinese poetry reading event at the Zoom. So wow. and I mentioned these two events in an article, because Indian magazine asked me to submit an article about how how you cope with COVID-19.
Oh,
So
okay.
I said, okay, I can use this.
Yes,
I
yes,
made this.
we
Yeah.
can. For those who do not know, I know Anna Yin because of our initiative in Flanders Fields. This is for those who are not Canadians. In Flanders Fields, they call it the most important poem, Canadian poem. I translated into Russian. There was quite a story around that. And then I realized that I am not the Russian speakers do not know, immigrants do not know the history of this poem. That the most important probably text in Canadian history. So probably other immigrants don't know either. So I involved poets and like other communities, and people did translate in Flanders Fields to their languages. Apparently, I realized that Anna Yin, you translated it even before my initiative, right? You did it on your
Yeah,
own.
yeah. I translated there for more than 10 years ago because
Yeah.
Humber College for the international students.
Yeah,
The one that
yeah,
introduced the Canadian poetry. So they
yeah.
asked me, yeah,
Yeah, but
for that.
many now we have 20 translations. I want to have 200.
Oh,
I
good.
have 20, and they're all on our website. But this is like most of them actually people translated specifically for this project. But your translation already existed. It just I need to nice person like Pat who introduced us to each other, so it was there. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Okay, so then we can read our poetry, basically you. Yeah, so
Okay. I'm a mute now, so.
okay, and now I want to invite Gary Light. Gary Light is bilingual. I believe Gary, like, your English and your Russian are equally good. I believe so.
So which language do you want me to read?
Of course, English. Like we don't have too many people, but of course, then for this audience in English.
All right. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It really is an honor. Brodsky is one of the most important poets of our times, really. But also, he's a very there's a very personal Brodsky in each of the people who really care about poetry, I think. I was lucky enough to have met him, and he is very special to hear reading his poetry. I mean, there's a lot of recordings, but when you hear it live, it was one of those epiphanies, I would say. I'm gonna read a poem which is called From Nowhere Was Love. From nowhere was love, Marchember the nth, my dear respected darling, but it doesn't matter who, since to be frank, the features aren't distinct anymore. Neither your nor anyone else's. Our loving friend salutations. From the one on the backs of cowboys of the 5 continents. I loved you more than himself or his angels, and so now I'm further from you than from both of them. Late at night, in Sleeping Valley, in a small town up to its doorknobs and snow, breathing on the top of the sheets, which to say the least isn't started below. I pommel the pillow, mumbling, you, across the seas which have no bounds or limits. In the dark, my whole body repeating anew your features, as in some crazy mirror. This is, of course, dedicated to the great love of his life, Marina Basmanov. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Gary, whose translation is this?
I'll have to look it up. I'll let you know.
I never like this is one of the most famous famous poems of Brodsky. I never read it in English.
I'll send it to you. It's a pretty good translation. I'll look it up. I'll let you know.
Wow, this is really good.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, do you want to say anything else? And maybe like
Well, if I have another
I want to say, so like again, not everybody here, not everybody know everybody, but want to say that I've never seen Gary in person, only on Zoom. I can see like have very few people who I would say belong to two cultures. I have like I know probably a few people in Israel and maybe 2-3 people here, right? So like two people who belong to both Russian and English culture. I believe, for example, Anna Yin, you the same thing about Chinese and English, right? So what do you feel about Gary, about this translation? Like is it the same feeling that original, or it's different?
Well, it does pass the meaning across. I think it's very good, but an original always pales in comparison. I mean, the translation always pales in comparison with the original. If I have another minute, I want to read another short one. I know yesterday in the Russian section, I read a very long poem, and there were people who were not happy with that. Can you send my apologies to those people who were not?
No, I actually I read a very good comment about this. About
Yeah, but like I said, that's why I asked you about the format. I wanted to make sure that
this is
violating the time limits. But this one is very short, and I think you will also recognize it. It's called To Urania.
Because unfortunately, as I said, I wish I knew English on that level, so to understand the beauty of translation. But I can understand the translation, but I do not think I'm allowed to speak about the level of translation, the quality, or
You
anything.
will definitely recognize the original right away.
Oh yeah, this is recognize every single word. Do you know anything like any other Brodsky poem translated into English?
Well, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to read a very short one called Kurani to Urania. Everything has its limit, including sorrow. A window pane stalls a stare, nor does a grill abandon a leaf. One may rattle the keys, gurgle down a swallow. Loneliness cubes a man at random. A camel sniffs at the rail with a resentful nostril. A perspective cuts emptiness deep and even. And what is space anyway, if not the body's absence at every given point? That's why Urania's older sister, Cleo, in daylight or with the soot-rich lantern, you see the globes pathé-free or of any bio. You see she hides nothing, unlike the latter. They are blueberry-laden forests, rivers where the folk with bare hands catch sturgeon, or the towns in whose soggy phone books you are staring no longer. Farther eastward surge on brown mountain ranges, wild mares carousing in tall sedge. The cheekbones get yellower as they turn numerous, and still farther east, steam dreadnoughts or cruisers, and the expanse grows blue like lace underwater. Thank you so much.
Wow, this is really cool.
All right, I'll send you the translations if you want.
Yeah, good to know. I feel this is like a huge educational and emotional experience for me.
And one last thing, we had a program in New York this morning, which Nina Kosman organized, and there she asked me to read some Ukrainian translations,
Wow.
which I did not. We decided we'll do it another time, but I actually read a poem which was originally written in English by Brodsky, which are very few of those. He translated himself, but he rarely actually wrote poetry in English. But that one I read over there. I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm just going to listen. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And this is cool. Thank you very much. Let me ask, Simone, do you want to say something?
Well, I'm just getting new to Brodsky. I came here to experience something different and new. It's very exciting, actually.
About Russian literature, like, do you have anything that you like in Russian literature, or you know in Russian literature?
Oh yes, we read a lot of Russian literature. 2017, it took me, I read War and Peace, of course, English translations, and I'm reading the Brothers Karamazov right now, and my husband has read more from Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, and who else are you reading?
Oh, well, right now I'm switched to Alexandre Dumas.
Oh yeah, well, no,
So
not.
I take a break.
Oh, do you guys know
Yeah.
French? Do you know French, or you read in translation? You know French too, to read Alexander?
Reading in French.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Wow.
I wish I could read Russian.
I see. Okay, so I hope, Simone, that you will like it. And just to introduce to people, Simone, the same as Anaïn, this is how I know Simone from our In Flanders Fields project. Actually, we did have a translation into German that was made specifically for this project. And Simone, who you are a German teacher, right? This is German language.
No, my mother spoke German. That's
okay,
the connection.
Okay. Sorry, but yeah, it was kind of you to read in German, because otherwise no other German speakers. Okay.
You know, in Chinese like Russian literature very much.
Of
Yeah.
course, we used to have like close relationships, and even in Soviet times, right? So
yeah, and also I named after Karina.
You named after Annika? Wow.
Yeah, I picked up my own name.
I was 100% sure that you have a Chinese name, because most Chinese people just they adjust their name to something. But your name is really Anna?
Yeah.
Wow.
No, it's not. It's Hui. It's total different. And in university, when I was 20, my English teacher asked us to have an English name. So I said, okay. And Karina is so I
nice.
like the love and the movie, right?
The character, yes.
So romantic. But I don't like the ending. So so I hope I don't have this kind of ending.
No, you do not have to. It's a beautiful name. My daughter is Anna too. Yeah, so understood. This is cool. Dina, do you want to say anything?
Alita, thank you for inviting me to this meeting, and I really enjoyed. And when you mentioned you wrote a letter to Brodsky, it was so funny for me, because when I was 17, and I fall in love to Mayakovsky.
I'm not sure if everybody here knows. Mayakovsky is a great Russian poet too, but different. The kid, he was born at the end of 19th century. But yes, understood. So Dina and I were from the same town. We actually graduated from same school and same university. So everybody else can see, maybe like all people from Kazan are that crazy, at least all girls.
Okay. And I visited in Moscow his museum, and I went to cemetery and visited his grave, and so it was so funny for me, and I was sure if I live in that time, I will definitely save him from suicide, you know. And I think all women around him were so stupid they didn't save him from suicide. And back to Brodsky, I would like to mention one documentary, and I enjoy it. It's called Walks in Venice. Walks in Venice, and Brodsky walked in Venice and visited little chapels, and he was so much in love with Venice. and it's very, very nice interview with him. And I'm not sure, do they have translation or subtitles?
There is, of course, it was filmed in Russian, but there is one version with the subtitles in English. Yes, Venice was one of his favorite.
If somebody would like to hear his voice and how he described what he knows, and
it was filmed in '94, I believe, 2 years before he died. So, and then yeah, he actually his grave is there in Venice.
So it's what I would like to mention.
And you've been there, right? I never been to Venice.
In Venice, yes, several times. And how one woman thought, I'm like old horse, come back to Venice, come back to
Venice. I see. Okay, this is cool. Okay, Ani Slama, maybe you want to say something. Ani is on mute. Ani?
You
No, not
okay.
I know the lady who, okay, or just maybe Jack, maybe you want to say something. And I can also see a person named Jenny, I just don't know who is this. Yeah, I can. I'm muted also. I assume if people stay muted, it means they want to be muted. Okay, so if so, we can read our own stuff. You know what? So let me be brave. I want to share with you one of my poems. This is actually translated into English, and this is a song. I will share my screen, so I will do only one. Share computer. So if you share in Zoom, you need to do share computer sound. Just tell me if you can hear the sound. Can you hear the sound?
By my place, visit me beyond the mirror. Don't be shy, don't be shy. I have here, and to go with it, chess pieces, chocolate, and sugar ones. I have a garden there, I have a garden there. Bells not that, and softly ring, and softly ring. And in the garden, a stream, no water sweeter, only drinking from the stream is forbidden. You'll forget the red back to the mirror. You'll forget the red back to the mirror. To the mirror. To the mirror.
And then they sing in Russian. So yeah, so that was mine, and let's take turns. Janine, do you want to read anything of your poetry?
Well, I wasn't, I mean, I was just going to say, I wouldn't have minded hearing the Russian part of it. Why don't you, I will read something, but why don't you play the Russian part of it so I can listen while I'm looking up what if I hadn't prepared anything. I didn't know I was going to be, you know, doing something of my own. So if you play the rest of it, I'd be interested to hear it.
No, yeah, most people don't understand Russian, so.
Neither do I, but just to hear the sound, just to hear the sound. But
by the way,
I heard the Brodsky's reading in Russian, right, on YouTube. And I found it so interesting. Actually, I like English better. I don't know. I don't know Russian, but I like English better. I think English is much, but anyway, maybe because.
Well, Brodsky had a very special way of reading. Some people would find it, you know, monotonous. And,
yeah.
That was his style, right? So.
Yeah, it's like some sounds repeating kind of. So, and it's a very. It's a kind of English. I mean, it's more smooth, more soft for me. I think.
Himself reading in English, even himself reading in English.
Yeah.
Maybe because in Russian he was more like, I don't know, would meditate in the sound of the language itself. It's his native language, and feeling the poetry. This is what I think, at least.
So maybe you play a little bit Russian, so I can.
No,
yeah.
You know what? I think I better I better say something a little bit, whatever quotation from what he said. For example, one of the things I would say I really like. You know, there are many people. There are philosophical discussions about aesthetics and ethics and what should go first. And of course, that ethics is very important. So this is what he is saying, that aesthetics is the mother of ethics, and the categories of good and bad are first and foremost aesthetic ones, preceding the categories of good and evil. This is so so unusual, and so like I would say revolutionary way of looking at things. Okay, maybe Janine, maybe you can recall something to read later on. Anna Yin, do you want to read something of yours?
Okay, sure. So as before I mentioned, I wrote a poem after Anna Akhmatova. So I read the one after her.
Akhmatova.
Yeah, Akhmatova. Why then, the title is Why Then Do We Not Despair? Why then do we not despair? In a butterfly suit, I hide my pessimistic skin, wrapping worries into a period. I enter an oasis of oblivion. My wings flutter effortlessly, free, so-called. Travelers stop by. I offer the divine forgetfulness. Shaking their heads, they race for mirages of the gold finger. I see elves' clock sweeping the sky, apparitions haunting behind. I wish I could warn them of cunning animal zones, blind-minded battlefields, clasping capital.
Anna, I think you muted yourself by mistake.
Yeah. Okay, because my hands move.
Okay. Yeah.
but my voice fades, my wings, dead leaves, fall on ground. The worries enclosed in my body, grow large and larger, any time to explode.
Wow.
Sorry. Okay.
No worries. This is cool. When did you write it?
Oh, write it many years ago, maybe more than 7 years ago. And
Wow.
at
So
that time, yeah,
you
at that
really,
time,
you really know Russian literature, because
yeah, I like her. Yeah.
Anna Karenina everybody knows, but
Yeah.
Anna Akhmatova, not too many people do. Wow.
Really? Oh. Okay, Janice, your turn.
Can you hear me?
I can, and asking other people, whoever is not talking, just put yourself on mute, okay?
Okay, somebody unmuted me because I feel like I keep muting myself and getting
Mm-hmm.
getting unmuted. So yes, Vita came a year ago to my book launch for my first book, Things Seen and Unseen, from Mosaic Press. They've also published Anna Yin. And it's so poignant now because it feels so long ago that that the book came out and there was this big event and all these people gathered together, and we don't know when we'll be able to do that again. I'm looking through here, and it's funny because I don't know Brodsky well. I know him just a little, but I mean, there was mention earlier of the wonderful 19th century novels, Russian novels that so many of us know and love. And I don't really have anything in here that speaks directly to Russian literature or culture, but just going for the general geographic area, I've spent a lot of time in Poland, and I speak Polish. I've been there about 8 times. And so it's, you know, geographically close. And I think spiritually, there's a lot in historic, like, you know, the history is complicated, but there's some similar sensibilities, some similar spiritual traditions with the Jewish and Christian religions, even though, of course, in you know, in Russia it was the Orthodox, and in Poland it was Catholicism. But one thing that I was so impressed with in Poland was the way people would make in rural areas these roadside shrines to Mary, the mother of Jesus. And I just wrote this about one of those, so I'll read that. Roadside Madonna. There was a time when deities spoke directly to us, their words upon our lips, their hands entwined with ours. A time when our love, our chores, even our fighting was a dance for the gods who moved us. But then the music stopped, and they stood up and left, even though we begged them to stay. We built you, roadside Maria, crowned you in flowers and caped you in blue, with the hope that you would convince them. But for all this time, no one has come, and still you stand at the roadside waiting. And whenever I pass by, even though your cloak is chipped away, you still stretch out your arms. And as you place your hands in mine, for one moment, I forget I'm waiting in vain. We both forget we're stone.
This is really cool, and I remember you reading. I really want to say I really like the book and your presentation. Janine, can I ask you to read one specific poem? Like I like many of them. My favorite is the one called the Unbirth.
Oh, okay. I'll read that one.
No, it's quite a short, but I like them. But
all right, Unbirth. I'll read that one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was never born. Instead, she made me. With thimbles for ears, buttons for eyes, an apple red smile drawn on my face. She wrapped me in finest velvet, then clipped my hair short so it would never grow out of her reach. I was never born, instead she made me. Engraved the inside of my head with her thoughts, welded my mouth with her words, then cleared a space in the curio, hid me behind polished glass. I was never born, instead she made me. Whenever I tried to escape, I fell. My feet were not made for walking, and immediately she scooped me up, stowed me away again safely. I was never born, instead she made me, though she did not know that slowly I was unmaking myself, tearing out the clipped hair, wiping off her painted smile. I was never born, instead she made me. I beat my head against the glass until her thoughts floated out and the door unlatched.
This is really cool. I really love it.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really, thanks. Gary, do you want to read anything of yours in English?
Actually, as I was listening, I would love to. It's sort of about the parallels, but you tell me if it's appropriate. It has to do with Canada. I am a real huge fan of Leonard Cohen. I think I might have told you that before.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, say it again. You're a big fan of what?
Of Leonard Cohen. Leonard
Leonard Cohen, yes. Mm-hmm.
He is probably as Canadian as that poem that you mentioned. Even more, perhaps. I've noticed a lot of parallels in his poetry and the poetry of Brodsky. In fact, I think I might write about it one day, because there's just so much that they may have had in common. I used to, Montreal is a short flight from Chicago, about an hour and a half. So I used to just fly into Montreal for a day or two and just walk around, Leonard Cohen's places and stuff. My wife and I actually just went last fall in September, and it was really unbelievable. I don't know how well you guys know Montreal, but a lot of Montreal is connected with Leonard. So if that's appropriate, and if we can draw the parallels, I will read a poem from my English book that just came out. It's called Confluences. And it's called Leonard Cohen's View from the Window. This particular view is from his window in Chelsea Hotel in New York City in Manhattan, but I've also kind of seen and guessed the view from his house in Montreal. I'll open with Leonard Cohen's line, "Those were the reasons, and that was New York." What Leonard Cohen had seen of the outside, an island view, not hydra yet sufficing. For those impressions which curtail sadness, fire escapes, their complex intertwining, across the street there was a laundromat, as well as that delightful Cantonese joint, a little awkward yet delicious and fulfilling. He also saw an entrance to a shrine, yet not the store full of guitars and other gear. As Janis, that's Janis Joplin, as Janis blocked the view while she wished for another kind of joy, completely different. And all the while, it appeared to her that she descended and not the other way around. Over her shoulder, just beyond the window, he contemplated such arrays of magic which rarely appear when in confluence, even with such discrete circumstances. They can't be sung or written down just that moment. Yet Leonard Cohen from his window saw it all, Manhattan sky of such amazing kind, that later on he wouldn't comprehend it. He also wouldn't know how the hell the buildings and the sirens simply vanished. All indications were the world as such apparently was ending. Yet The weather fox provided explanations less drastic to New Yorkers to consider. Then he remembered Canada and his beloved Montreal, where certain happenings were also quite infrequent, especially in those interpretations that were Suzanne, as when she goes down abruptly to the river in November. It's cold and windy in accordance to the text. What Leonard Cohen saw from that hotel on 23rd and 7th through the window belongs to no one, yet to everyone, while contemplation still remained without choice. What Leonard Cohen saw appeared spellbound, quite impossible in diametric vision, burned by the sun, the future of Key West, where he is being tried in Russian versions. Ironically, the best attempt belongs to an enigma of the past, so full of doubt, as to her talent and her beauty even more. Her role had ended. Yet coming off her protracted absence, she suddenly appeared some years later in a brief encounter by very random chance, on an intersection of what island which belonged to Leonard Cohen viewed from Chelsea in 1960s. Back then, he somehow managed to foresee the future in the way that certain sketches, made out of music, sounds, and some words, which are enlightened by the volume of his kind. They balance out those under the moon, which contradict the harmony of light. And therefore, that window at the Chelsea forever will belong to Leonard Cohen, who saw it all. That night of love was Janus, his wisdoms for tomorrow, not today. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to tell you guys that you have so much on us over there to the north. You've got Leonard Cohen, you've got government that actually makes sense and cares. Thank you so much.
Well, I've been here, I came in 1999, right? So exactly 21 years. It's interesting to learn, the States and Canada used to have all this, war, contradiction, what conflicts, what not. But yeah, we have so many friends on both sides of the border.
Well, things will change soon, and I think Canada is our best friend, and I love Canada. My parents choose to go to America, and I respect that.
Come to visit us.
But every time I come to Canada, I feel right at home. Right at home. I love Canada very much. Well, thank you so much for your time, for listening.
Thank you. Anybody want to read anything else? Simone, maybe I'm not sure if you write poetry, but maybe you want to read somebody else's poetry.
No, I have nothing. No.
Anna, Janine.
I might share one.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Because speak about Canada, right? I'm really happy to be here also. So, and
sorry, when did you come? What year? When did you come?
In 1999.
So exactly like me. Exactly like me.
Yeah, 20 years now. So I wrote a poem. I remember when I went to poetry reading, I was very shy because of my accent, right? So another poet told me, "Don't worry, Anna, your accent is charming." So I said, "Okay." so I wrote a poem about my accent. So yeah, my accent. It is charming, I assure you. I assure myself and choose to believe so. Languages have colors. I want to show you my tender blue, but you cut off with fork and knife, quicker than my chopstick taps. My accent grows trees, trails, and winding roads towards the west coast landscape. It points to the open sky, yet clouds are too heavy and form raindrops. My papers collect them, then dry in silence. I have hesitated many times before speaking. Now it develops teeth, even with gaps between. I decide this is my voice. So yeah, I use that point when I go to school to teach like a poetry alive workshop. I encourage them to don't worry about your like how to say your accent or other barriers or so, and work other way to advance it or to make to challenge it. So for my poetry workshop, because my major is computer science. So my day life is IT professional. So my poetry workshop used the computer as like visual, dynamic, teaching. So school likes it very much. And so in this way, I make up, right? Because of my accent, my English. So it sometimes it's your disadvantage, but it just challenge you to use new way to teach or to help. So yeah, and also I made this year the school, every year school invite me to poetry alive workshop. So this year schools are closed. So I made
only Zoom sessions like now, right?
Yeah, I made the online workshop on YouTube. So and school can use it by themselves. So yeah.
This is very cool. Okay, cool. Anybody else want to thank you, Anna? Want to read anything? Janine?
I mean, you've already heard from me. I don't know if there's anybody else. There are 9 people on here. I don't know if everybody has spoken.
Not other people are not reading.
Could we ask you to read some more of your stuff, please?
I don't have much translated into English.
Can you read something in Russian?
No, Russian doesn't make sense. Like I want everybody to understand. I have a couple of essays, but essay is too long. Next time. This is fine.
I mean, I don't want to, if you don't want to, it's fine. But I mean, even though I don't understand the words, I would just appreciate hearing the sound. And I'm sure that people that do know the language would appreciate hearing it.
I second that.
Actually, I have one you guys, you read something. I will find one more translation.
Why don't you read something in Russian? That would really
Russian does make sense.
It totally does.
No, it's the same thing, and you and I would just start speaking Russian. It's not.
No, we won't start speaking Russian. Russian language is like music. We'll listen to it
maybe just read a part of it, so that we feel female voice.
You know what? You know what? I will read one second. Actually, translated into English. Yeah. Okay, so this one, it's very short. So I can read in Russian first and then in English. By the way, Janine, the first one that played made into music, and this one too, these two verlibres, you know, the free poetry, translated by Serge. That's all. Okay, so then so bear with me. I read in Russian first, but it's very short, and then in English. Молиться Богу — это совсем не бессмысленно. Просто ответ приходит через очень долгое время, потому что твое сообщение тоже поступает к нему через большой промежуток времени, потому что от Бога отделяют огромное расстояние. К тому же Бог часто отвлекается, потому что очень любит играть своими разноцветными игрушками. Now in English. Praying to God is not at all senseless. Only the answer takes a very long time to arrive. Because your message also gets delivered after a large passage of time. Because God is separated by a huge distance. Moreover, God gets often distracted because he loves playing with his multicolored toys.
Oh.
No, but this is I'm not that brave. Anybody want to read anything else? Like not necessarily your a poet who write poetry better read their own. Other people. Dina, do you like any of English poetry?
I'm not sure.
You don't?
No, I just I really like Russian poetry, and my favorite one is Arseny Tarkovsky. So, but English poetry, nothing come to my mind right now. Oh, actually, I do like Shakespeare. You know, Shakespeare in translation of
Translated by whom?
there is several
Oh,
translations.
yeah, there are as many translators as people, but of course, and everybody blames everybody else that the translations of Shakespeare are not good because it's not close or.
Vita, could I read another very short one by Brodsky?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, so first, it's for a long time, it's one of my favorite poems. So very short excerpt in Russian and a very short translation into English. Actually, I have the translator here. His name is Richard Wilbur. And the Russian original goes like this. Так долго вместе прожили, что вновь 2 января пришлось на вторник. Что удивленно поднятая бровь, как со стекла автомобиля дворник, с лица сгоняла смутную печаль, незамутненной оставляя даль. Так долго вместе прожили, что снег, коль выпадет, то думалось навеки, что дабы не зажмуривать ей веки, я прикрывал ладонью их веки, не веря, что их пробуют спасти, метались там, как бабочки в горсти. Okay, and now English. So long had life together been that now, the 2nd of January fell again on Tuesday, making her astonished brow lift like a windshield wiper in the rain, so that her misty sadness cleared and showed a cloudless distance waiting up the road. So long had life together been, that once the snow began to fall, it seemed unending, that at least the flakes should make her eyelids wince. I'd shield them with my hand, and they pretending not to believe that cherishing a rise would beat against my palm like butterflies.
Thank you so much, Gary. But this poem is actually it is much longer.
It is, but I didn't want to take the time.
Well, this is a serious reading for Brodsky. Some people may disagree with me. What I think about him, it's like two poets or even like two person in one. His early poems are very different from what he wrote in later time. In my opinion, completely different. This is like they're more philosophical and less emotional, or whatever. Or this is like they are emotional, but they're emotional like I don't know, Johann Sebastian Bach symphony, something like that.
That's a very interesting thought, but it's for a long conversation.
It's for a long conversation. Okay. If no other readings, I would like to end with something again from Brodsky, but not from his poetry, but actually the extract from his trial. As I said, he was under the trial, accused because he is a parasite and blah blah. And back then, Soviet Union, no democracy, people couldn't, very few people could attend. It was forbidden to actually to write down, to do transcript of the trial. But one lady, Frida Viktorova, this is a very I don't even know how to define her, a great person in Russian culture. So what she did was illegal. She pretended she is not writing anything, but she did the transcript. So briefly, we have the full transcript of the trial now. And this is what I want to read. The trial, the judge asked, the whole discussion was they're asking him, what are you doing? He said, you're not working. No, I'm working. What are you doing? I'm writing poetry. I'm translating poetry from different languages to Russian. And then the trial judge said, so who has recognized you as a poet? Who has enrolled you in the ranks of poets? And Brodsky responded, no one. Who enrolled me in the ranks of human race? So I think this is the good ending, and the good ending for the meeting, and the good start for every poet to write poetry. Like, who enrolled you? Okay, thank you so much, guys. I'm so happy. So happy to have you here, and keep in touch, and stay safe. And I hope all this story will end. The bad things will end shortly, and we will see.
Thank you very much, Vita. We are waiting for you in Chicago next Friday, right?
Okay. See you guys. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye bye. Stay well.
Bye. Stay safe. Bye.